This is the Confidence Academy podcast. My name is Lilli Club and I am a transformational confidence coach, and I'm here with a message for you. The anxiety and overwhelm you've been experiencing is not something to be feared or avoided. It's also not something that gets to define who you are as a person. No matter who you are, no matter what your story is, I know that you get to live a life of fulfillment and joy. It's my absolute pleasure to bring this podcast series to you in collaboration with some phenomenal people from all over the world who have walked the same path as you. Together, we will share our stories, our challenges, and our triumphs with the intention of helping you to see that it's possible for you too. Anxiety may be something you live with, but it doesn't get to define who you are or how you live your life. So stand by for some powerful conversations, deep realizations, and the occasional F-bomb. So get those headphones in if you're around sensitive ears, and stand by. This is going to be fun. Hello and welcome back to the Confidence Academy podcast. My name is Lilli Club. That tapping you can hear in the background is my 1-year-old throwing pens at the keyboard as I speak to you. So I can only apologise. I'd love to say that it will stop, but it won't. I'm just hoping that she doesn't grab the entire computer and throw it to the floor. She's already thrown my washing absolutely everywhere, but it's fine. So anyway, we're live today. We are going live on Facebook to bring this episode to you. And this is the weekly podcast. So I don't know if you tuned in last week, but the podcast got relaunched. And the idea is each week I will bring you an episode myself, like a shorter episode that I record live. And then you'll also get one of the amazing interviews that I've done with one of my fabulous guests from all around the world. I'm just now going to sit this child on my lap because I'm just worried about absolutely everything going flying. So anyway, welcome back to the podcast. Now, if you are watching the live video, you might notice that I look a little bit different to normal. I'm not going to say completely different. But for those of you that are not watching and only listening, let me paint the picture. I've got 2 massive red puffy eyes, like bags for days, and my hair's all scraped back. I'm in a dressing gown. I've got my headphones on, so I look like some kind of Princess Leia gone horribly wrong. And the reason I'm describing this to you, if you're not on the live, is because it's the entire point of what I want to share in today's episode. So I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and I'm going to name and shame her. And I'm going to explain why I'm naming and shaming her as well. So me and my friend Bobby were having a conversation. Now, Bobby is an amazing young lady. And we have some incredible conversations. And I have said to her on more than one occasion, and she's said to me as well, that we should do a live podcast together. And then it doesn't happen. And I was talking to her yesterday, and I said to her something about my podcast. She went, "Oh, I love a podcast." And I said, "Yeah, I know you do." I said, "Did you listen to mine from last week?" She went, "Oh, yeah, no, not yet." I was like, "Hang on a minute." I said, if I was Russell Brand," she loves Russell Brand, I said, "you'd have dropped everything to watch his little YouTube video. What's Russell Brand got that I don't have?" And she was like, "I don't know." She said, "I don't know what that is." She said, "When I get the little ping for Russell Brand, I literally stop what I'm doing to watch." So I was like, well, so I don't really know what to take from that, you guys. I mean, let me know. Do you stop what you're doing to listen to my podcast? Or have you just shoehorned me in where I fit? I mean, you know, it's okay. It is what it is. But anyway, the reason I'm naming and shaming Bobby is because, Bobby, if you're listening to this podcast, first of all, congratulations. You can now be my friend again. And second of all, let's get the bloody podcast recorded that we keep saying we're going to do. I feel like the people need the benefit of our joint wisdom. So anyway, there's that. But the conversation we were having yesterday was about how we as human beings often struggle with things like anxiety or like overwhelm. And me and Bobby were having the conversation about how our house gets in a state. Now, I must say, as a person, I am a pretty messy person anyway. I'm a creative person, let me say that. And housework literally it just doesn't even enter my brain, except for on the odd occasion. Now, I will say today is one of those days. I've woken up and I've put some washing in the machine because I felt compelled to do so. But that's not normal behaviour for me on a Saturday. And if you could look around this house, it's like a treasure trove of tat and clutter. Bobby actually is not like that. Bobby is someone who loves a clean house, and Bobby has even come and decluttered my house, trying to save me from myself. But we were having this conversation yesterday about how when we're struggling internally, like with anxiety or overwhelm or anything like that, how things like housework get pushed to the side. Even things like personal hygiene, like washing your hair or just getting yourself up properly. I know there have been days for me where I've gone 3 days and not taken care of myself properly. And that's been when I've been in the real pit of, not even the pit of despair, but just in that wobbly territory where I just can't put the pieces together. And where that conversation then led, because Bobby was telling me about herself and she was like, oh, look at my hair, it's a mess today and I haven't done this and I haven't done that. And I was like, Bobs, I said, you're literally describing me. I was exactly the same yesterday. I hadn't washed my hair at that point. I did wash it later that day, I have to say. But I said to her, that's exactly me. And she said, but you know, like, to look at you, you'd never think that. You would never think that you struggle like that. You would never think that you hadn't washed your hair. You would never think that you were struggling. And I was like, but that's the same for you as well. And that's the same for all of us. We go around beating ourselves up when we haven't managed to keep up with the washing, or when we haven't hoovered our house, or when we haven't brushed our hair or washed it, or if we haven't put makeup on, or like whatever it may be. And then we tell ourselves the bullshit lies that we are the only ones doing that. And we look around the world at the people around us and we go, see, that person isn't struggling, that person isn't struggling, that person has it all together. And it just isn't true. So I was meant to go live yesterday for this podcast, but it ended up being a nicely busy day. I went for lunch with Bobby. I mean, that's really the reason. And some other friends. And then, you know, we bummed around. I had my kids in the evening, and then Kev's daughter came over. So, you know, family stuff. And it just wasn't the right time to do a podcast. And, you know, I created a business for myself so that it could be flexible, so that if I wanted to spend time with my family, then I could. I'm certainly not going to be a slave to my own creation. But I've woken up this morning and I was like, do you know what? I really want to talk about that conversation because I think it's so relevant. And I know I do it. And I specifically do it when it comes to the things I'm struggling with. So if I haven't washed my hair that day, it's people's hair that I'll notice, and then I'll tell myself every other person in the world washed their hair today and I didn't, and that makes me a terrible human. If it's like a money thing, like if I'm struggling with money that day, or if I've run out, or if I've messed up a bill or something, I'll look around and I'll go, everyone else has their money stuff together. I'm the only one that's struggling, and therefore I'm a rubbish human being. It always comes back to that belief, like, I've done this, I haven't done that, and therefore I'm a rubbish human being. Therefore I failed as a human being. And that's really what you know, it's like a leg sweep. It just takes the weight from under us and we fall down, because then we feel like we failed as people and we think we're the only ones, and that even then feels like an even bigger failure than the original failure that we thought we were facing. And having this conversation yesterday with Bobby, she was saying to me, but I would never think that of you. And I was saying to her, but I would never think that of you. Like, you know, and I said to her that really the only difference between us is Bobby was still making it mean something. She'd got in the car and was beating herself up still for the things that she'd not accomplished that day. And I've just learned to let it go really quickly. It is what it is. It doesn't mean anything. It actually only means what you allow it to mean. And so I've come on this podcast this morning because I felt compelled to have the conversation. And I'm still in my dressing gown. I've got Sophia on the boob. My eyes are like pools of piss in the snow. Hi, Kat. Because I've got some, like, it's the recurring cold that I'll now have until January probably. And I know that that's a limiting belief in itself, but it is what it is. Maybe I will try not to keep saying that, and then we'll see if I stop having colds. But it's just typical for me at this time of year to get a cold upon a cold upon a cold. And so I've woken up today full of it again, and my eyes, like, literally, I look a mess. It would have been so easy for me to not come on this live stream. It would have been so easy for me to just record the podcast, because normally I don't record the podcast on a live stream. I normally record the podcast as an audio. And actually, that's why I love having a podcast, because I frequently look this undone. And it doesn't matter on a podcast. I can just stick my headphones on and go. But I felt like it was important to show people, just in case anybody who watches my videos or listens to my podcast is under the illusion that I'm someone that always has it all together and that I'm someone who always has it put together. I mean, for a start, what does that even mean? It doesn't matter. Like, am I not inspiring you right now? Am I not having an important conversation right now? Does it matter that I look like this? Does it matter that I've got a cold? Does it matter that I'm in my dressing gown? None of it matters. It really doesn't, but we tell ourselves that it does. And I think, especially in this culture that we're in now of social media, where people are just constantly sharing their, shiny shop fronts, as I like to call it. People will share, especially on Instagram, I find, like, that Instagram culture of, it's not even that people put on makeup to take the picture. They put on makeup to take the picture and then they add a filter. It's this whole shiny shop front of, look how great my life is. They'll share pictures of their kids when they're being adorable, but then they won't share the video of their kid having an absolute meltdown. So, I am purposely recording this podcast on a Saturday morning. I have all three of my kids here. None of us are dressed. Sophia's on the boob. I look like crap, but I don't care. It doesn't matter. And I think the biggest downfall, and this was our conversation yesterday that me and Bobby were having, I think the greatest downfall of us as human beings is when we tell ourselves that we are the only ones struggling, or when we tell ourselves that nobody else is, that everyone else has got it all together and we're the only ones that don't. That's the worst thing that we tell ourselves, because as soon as we believe that, we stop functioning and we stop showing up and we stop going after the things we want to do, because then we tell ourselves we don't deserve to do it. We think, like, again, this was a conversation yesterday that Bobby and I had about overwhelm, right? And back to the thing, I was ribbing her because she hadn't listened to my podcast. And she was like, the reason I haven't listened to the podcast is because I have to listen to things in order. And she's got so many of my podcasts and audios and programs and stuff that she's accumulated over the year and a bit that I've known her. And she was like, I feel like I can't just dive in. I have to listen to it in order. And I was like, I 100% get it. I'm exactly the same. In fact, if you've been a fan of the podcast for a while, you'll notice that for a good, I would say, year, in fact, probably 18 months, because it's been pretty much as soon as Sophia arrived, I got out of the swing of my podcast. Before Sophia was born, I was being very good about putting my podcast out weekly. And at times it even came out daily. I was really smashing it. And I was doing interviews and I was broadcasting them the same day or the following day. And then I started to accumulate a bit of a list. And I've currently got about 30 episodes recorded with amazing people that have never seen the light of day. And it got to the point where there'd been a big enough gap that I was like, okay, I want to relaunch the podcast. But then I started telling myself, well, how can I relaunch the podcast if I've got old episodes? It's not going to work. And I got into real overwhelm about how to bring the episodes to the people. It was like, oh, but they're not in sequence. It's going to be confusing for people. And how can I relaunch it? You might even notice that I changed the name of the podcast for about 5 minutes. I changed it to Free Your Voice and then changed it back. And that's overwhelm. That's exactly what overwhelm is. If you're watching me or listening to me and thinking that, I'm the benchmark because I've got it all together and you want to get there, please understand, I don't have it all together. I still suffer with overwhelm. In the end, I just decided to relaunch the podcast and do what felt good. And so what feels good is to just share the episodes however they come. Like, they'll be shared in order, but at the same time, you're going to get these live episodes from me where it's in real time. But, at the end of the day, I know that the conversations I've had with people have been phenomenal. I know that when you listen to those episodes, they may be life-changing for you. Because sometimes just hearing someone with a similar story to you, or sometimes just hearing how another person has navigated the path that you're on can really, really help. And it was selfish of me to be sat over here going, oh, I can't share that because it seems out of sequence. I mean, Jesus Christ. You know, there's an analogy that I've used before that I'm going to use again. Whoops, baby's falling off the lap because I'm trying to blow my nose. There's an analogy I've used before that I'll use again. Imagine you're on the edge of a cliff, right? And somebody has fallen over the edge and they're clinging on by their fingertips and they're screaming for help. And you have the ability to help them, right? Would you, hi Leah, would you drop to your knees immediately and grab them over the edge just with everything you had? Or would you stand there thinking about, oh, how shall I pull them over? Should I fashion a rope out of the clothes I'm wearing? Should I run to the nearest town and find a professional with a professional rope pulley? Like, no, you wouldn't. But when you're sat there second guessing yourself, whether that's around content to put out in the world or whether that's just about you showing up as you, you're essentially doing the same thing. When you understand that you're an amazing human being with the power to shift people and with the power to change yourself, then really it's selfish to not just show up in the world however you come, whether that's with puffy eyes, slicked back hair and some weird headphones, or whether you decide to, you know, literally brush your hair, put your makeup on or whatever. It doesn't matter. Every time you open your mouth, every time you just exist as the amazing human being you are serving the world in the best possible way. And so I wanted to have this conversation today because I want you to know that, you know, it doesn't matter if you're not put together the whole time. It doesn't matter if you don't have it all figured out. Nobody does. The biggest bullshit lie we tell ourselves is that we're the only ones struggling and that we should somehow hide until we've got it all figured out, or we should somehow hold back until we've figured out the path. Nah, it doesn't work like that. So I hope that you found this helpful. And Bobby, if you're listening, get in touch. Let's get this episode rolling. I just think it would be amazing. If you guys want to hear Bobby on the podcast as well, send me a message, let me know so that I can pummel her with it. Bobby's like me, she's a massive people pleaser. Boys, what's going on? Louis? Okay, well that's the end of the podcast because my kids are having a meltdown. This is exactly what I wanted to share with you though. This is don't draw on your new pyjamas. This is life. This is life. Like, don't look at the entrepreneurs you have online and tell yourself that all their kids are sat behaving themselves all of the time, or that they have, you know, a staff of people helping them so that they can do their thing. So many of us are navigating real life while running our businesses. So many of us are navigating real life while navigating our own emotions and our own mental health issues. It is what it is. You're not alone. Sophia, stop drawing on your new pajamas. And with that, I'm going to end the podcast. Listen out for the interview that's coming out later. I will send a link when it comes, and I'll be back again next week. Mwah. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved it, please make sure you subscribe and leave us a comment over on iTunes to make sure you never miss an episode. And for additional resources, masterclasses with our guest experts, and weekly live coaching with me, why not join us as a member of the Lilli Club? You can find all of the details in the show notes of this episode. In the meantime, thank you again, and we'll be back soon. Big love.